Hi, I'm Mark Greaney, and you're watching the Crew Reviews.
Mark Greaney, welcome back to our friend, the number one New York Times bestseller. How have
Right.
you been, sir?
I've been good. Good to see you guys.
Dude, it's great seeing you. Yep, there it is, Midnight Black. I got
hmm
it in my hand here right now, too. So
Yeah.
we know you're probably immersed in The Next Gray Man, number 15, but can you
Yep.
give our audience just a quick thumbnail of what Court is into in this book, Midnight Black?
Yeah, it's 14th book. It's a standalone like all the others. You don't have to read the first 13 to follow along. But as you said, it's about a guy named Court Gentry, who's a former CIA paramilitary officer. And in this book, the woman he loves is a former SVR, so Russian foreign intelligence officer. She's Russian, and she has disappeared inside of Russia. And all of Court's friends think she's dead. He just can't let himself believe that. So this book opens up with him in Romania, trying to make a deal with the Romanian mob to smuggle him on a smuggling ship across the Black Sea into Sochi, so he can go to the world's largest country to try and find this woman that nobody thinks is alive. And while this is all going on, a really cunning FSB colonel, a Russian internal intelligence colonel, realizes what's going on and does his best to lure the gray man into a trap in Russia. So to me it kind of harkens back to the Cold War era spy novels that I loved
Yeah.
reading when I was younger. And but there's also a lot of John Wick action in it.
Best of both worlds right there.
Yeah.
So Midnight Black, we see Court operating with an uncharacteristic recklessness and emotional vulnerability while he's searching for Zoya. So how did you approach writing this new, more emotionally raw version of the Gray Man while still maintaining that core essence of character that readers have come to know over the 13 previous books?
I really like doing things that are slightly different than things that I've done before. So the kind of the last emotion or the last sort of skill that Court has developed in this long series has been his ability to trust somebody and to fall in love and to kind of relax into a relationship. And that's been pulled away from him. So I tried to think like, what would that be like? And you always think about what would propel the story even faster and more, explosively, and thinking about this guy who is really, really good at tradecraft and really, really good at all these skills. What if he was just like a ticking time bomb because of desperation to to save someone? And then I have to say that like Zoya herself is a strong character.
hmm
It's not one of these things where she's just like a prop placed there for him to come rescue. She has some agency in what's going on as well in many different ways. So I wanted this story to feel like these characters had really, really high personal stakes because there's a big geopolitical thing going on that they're all right in the middle of. And as they're, trying to negotiate their way through this crazy maelstrom of war and, penal colonies and all these different things, wanted it to be rooted on the characters and not the geopolitics.
Yeah. This book, it has a kind of fairly large scale feel to it. Maybe not like Red Metals in
Hmm.
scope, but kind
Hmm.
of like what you were saying, kind of like maybe the older Tom Clancy level, like size to this story.
Yeah.
And you said in the past, you don't write the story in a linear fashion, that you skip around to different scenes. So when you're writing something with as much going on as this one is, how do you keep that storyline straight? And do you have a timeline issue to fix all of this or rewrite it?
The book is just such a mess while I'm working on it, and I really don't know what's going
Wait,
on.
wait, wait. Say that again. Say that again. The book is what?
It's such a mess while I'm
Oh.
writing it. Yeah, it's true. Hey, instead of you guys getting the book in February, I'll give you the book in July this year and see what
I had well,
Because
yeah, you're,
you would never know that, right? We can see the finished product,
you see the
obviously.
finished
yeah,
Yeah.
product. Yeah, and it's so you know when people say, how do you keep it straight or whatever? Well, it's not straight for a really, really long time. And, there's parts that I want in there and there's things that I'm confused by and things that like, when you write these things on a deadline, even though this book took a lot longer than they usually do, you're always sort of going, all right, I really don't know why this character has this motivation right now. But I'm gonna have to figure that out. I'm gonna have to like come back in here and make this all perfect and seamless. But I have no idea right now, but I can't just stop and think about it. I have to keep writing and work it out later. So there's these huge things, and those are kind of you've probably maybe experienced it with your writing as well, like where you leave a gaping hole in the logic or the plot or something in the story, and you write past it. It's nagging at you so much, and it kind of like keeps drawing you back to it, but you don't have the answer. And then when you get a little piece of the answer, it's the greatest thing in the world. And when you finally are on your third edit of the whole book, and you're like, "Wow, that looks like I knew what I was doing." That's the best feeling at all. But that's right as you turn the book in, so you don't get to sort of bask
Yeah.
in. I've never written a book where like I'm a third of the way through, going like, "Oh, this is going so good." It's always kind of like, okay, I know I've got some good stuff and some ideas, but it's all, like I said, just a big, huge mess. And 150, 160,000 word mess is a big mess.
Jeez. Well, you mentioned Zoya and her agency, and her current predicament is the driver and the catalyst for the story of Midnight Black. Anecdotally, from talking to other fans of the Gray Man, which I do a lot, and reading online feedback, she's a wildly popular character. Um, Looking back to when you introduced her, how much of that character's growth was calculated from the beginning, and how much of it was like a serendipitous accident?
Yeah, a lot of it was accidental. I remember I wanted sort of the female version of Court as a Russian to be an adversary in a book, but I from the beginning I thought, they would come to some kind of détente and work together. And then, I mean, sadly, you can't, write these without going like, are they going to fall in love? Are they going to have some kind of romantic relationship? I mean, that he's had a lot of strong female characters in this series. I can think of in Deadeye and in Ballistic and different books, and he did not have romantic relation. Actually, he did with the girl in Ballistic, but a lot of times he doesn't. But this one, I think, sort of from the beginning, I thought, they not only stop hunting each other, they or stop, fighting at cross purposes, but they work together and then they get into a relationship. But then, that was Gunmetal Gray when that happened. So that was book
Yeah.
6, I think. So that was 8 books ago. She has not been in every book, and there's a reason for that. But when she is in the books, I've sort of developed her relationship with Court, and they've had some tough patches and mistrust and all these different things that you would think might happen if you were, doing what these people do for a living or living, that world. But I will say that, it has developed a lot further than I thought it would. Maybe because I didn't, it's hard to plan out 8 books or 10 books. And first off, you don't know if you're going to be writing 8 books or 10 books. So happy accident is closer to the truth. Yeah.
Well, kind of along those lines, writer geek question. How has her presence been beneficial to you uh, in developing Court?
Hmm. Yeah, that's this relationship doesn't make sense if you look at the Court from the first couple of books.
Right.
He's not a guy that this would happen to. So it sort of complements his story. Like it just adds to his story arc a little bit, and or a lot. And that's been like one of his key developments. And Zoya she was in Gunmetal Gray, and she was a major character, and she was in uh, Mission Critical, and she was in Relentless. She was definitely in the Chaos Agent. So I think she's probably been in about 5 of the last 8 books, maybe 6, and have with different sized roles. And I think probably 3 books ago, I just had Court just absolutely fall in love with her, and the relationship turned into something more than it had been earlier. And it's been fun, as you said, to kind of use her as a way to show Court's growth. And not only that, but Zoya, she had addiction problems and burner and so she's gone through a lot, and she has a story to tell too, and it's fun to write her just as much as it is to write him.
Yeah, she needs a little vacation there, Mark.
Yeah.
She had a little bit of a rough patch.
She had a rough patch. Yeah, and I remember getting sort of hate mail from people saying that, of course the woman has got to be the one with the problems, and I'm like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to read a bunch of my other books, but
That's
my
hilarious.
hero, there's
Court's got
nothing
some problems.
Yeah, there's nothing she's going through that he hasn't done 5 times.
Chris, quit sending him mail, would you please?
Yeah, come on, Chris.
Come on, Chris.
It's the only way I get to talk to him.
Yeah,
He's so busy writing these 150,000 word page books that then he has to whittle down to. What is it? What does it get whittled down to? 95?
150?
No, 150, 140.
This book was 161. I just remember that.
Yeah.
The one before that was like 171. So
yeah, just say, what are you talking about, Chris?
No. I know he writes long, but it's just. I struggled to write 80,000 words, and he's also like, I got like 170,000. But anyway,
I struggle to write 80,000 words. That's
twice.
All right. So staying with that theme that we were just talking about, Court, he's evolved from the lone operative to someone who's finally opened himself up to deep personal connection and vulnerability. How has this emotional journey influenced your approach to writing action sequences in Midnight Black? Did you find yourself weighing the stakes differently now that Court has more to lose than just his own life?
I try to keep reminding myself that it is a very personal story between these individual characters. And so, as I was saying earlier, regardless of the fact there's huge geopolitical things, and the last act of this story is a big military operation, of which Court is one person, and Zoya is one person, and Zach is one person, and there's a lot of people involved. I guess hundreds or maybe thousands off camera. But I didn't want it to feel like like we're playing Stratego or something like that. It's like I wanted to represent those things accurately, the battle and the raid and all these things. But at the same time, I wanted the reader to be, in Court's pocket or in Zoya's pocket or looking over their shoulder throughout the whole thing. So as I'm writing action, and I put something big in there. There's 4 tilt rotor aircraft that are doing this thing. It's like I go inside the tilt rotor aircraft, and you're right there with Zach as he's, the guy next to him is vomiting, and he's arguing with the crew chief and all these things. It's like I always want to just, as big as you make the story, you always want to like go pinpoint back down into like what matters, and what matters are the characters that the readers are rooting for or rooting against.
I like the translator, by the way. I like that's his.
Oh yeah,
there's a nice.
Yeah. What was his name? Pavel or something?
Pavel.
I don't know.
Wait. Mark said the author. What was his name?
A few bucks ago.
One thing that happens to me is a lot of times in the edits, I will just sort of for the first time recognize that someone's name, a character's name, like a secondary character just from this book, is similar to another name or doesn't sound right with the other stuff. And then so I'll change the name like right at the very end. And so I may have read the book, that a scene 100 times with the guy named Edward, and now his name is, Bob. And I don't remember that, and then I send it off to my editor, and I'll do like 2 read-throughs, and I'll be doing press for it, and people will ask about that character. And it's like,
oh my gosh,
it depends on the quality of the person interviewing you, because sometimes they just, I'm coming like, man, you're leading me through a minefield on live TV.
How many times?
It's like, so Bob has an interesting story, and I'm like, fucking does he? I don't know. Tell me about it.
Next time.
That's not the 5-second clip of me. You're gonna.
No, totally, brother. Bro, you have no idea.
This will be the 5-second clip.
I've already starred that. So next time you write, just put Mike Houts for like every other person. Yeah. Every time.
I mean, we're 6 books after you promised to name a character after me. I'm just gonna say that right now.
Hey, my next book takes place in Northern Ireland, so
hey, there you go.
You're in there anyway, Sean.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, didn't Sean die in Red Metal? Or Mike?
No.
Somebody died.
You're thinking of Rip Rawlings'
Rip.
book.
Oh,
His
they're wrong.
solo
Yeah.
book.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right.
And
you and I
it
read
wasn't.
this
It wasn't. It didn't
KIA.
say Sean. It said my last name.
Okay. So anyway,
Which there are a ton of those.
Cameron Diaz, they said.
Yeah, Cameron Diaz. Exactly.
Diaz.
Exactly.
Wrong person.
Not her, please not.
No,
her.
you're
Don't you kill
just
her.
a minute ago. You reminded me though of I don't know if you've ever seen this Saturday Night Live where William Shatner hosts, and he's at a Star Trek.
Yeah.
And people start
One of the
asking
greatest.
questions about episodes.
Yeah,
And he finally just snaps.
The safe. What's the number to the safe
combination
code?
of the
combination.
safe.
Yeah. And they're all dressed
It was just
up
to
and
show
they
people.
Spock ears, and he's like, "Get a life."
Get
Oh,
a
man.
girlfriend. Kiss a girl, will you?
Hey, despite Court's lethality, he does have this conscience when it comes to innocence that he puts, sometimes in harm's way in some of the storyline. Like in this book, it was the Latvian woman. There was a grandfather with a resistance fighter, and then, like you were mentioning just a minute ago, like Zach Hightower, he's not generally as concerned about all these things, other than losing men under his command. That's his primary.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, how do you see Court and Zach now, similar and/or different in these fundamental type situations?
Earlier in the series, Zach was really close to an antagonist, but he was an antagonist that I liked, and so he was kind of hard to kill off. I had a plan to kill him on target, and
Thought he was going to die.
yeah, and then I just was like, you know what, maybe he could be sort of a foil or an antagonist that comes and goes. And then just as I started to like the character, I don't even think it was, I mean, I love that the readers like him, but I really think that maybe I started to like him before they did, and kept him around. And now, and I made him very wisecracking and funny and sarcastic, and I like doing that. And I like Court having somebody to play off, Court being more dry, having somebody to play off of. So that they're fun to write together, a lot of fun to write together. But I've put Zach in some really serious situations recently in the last few books. And so like just the humor didn't make sense to me. Like it didn't feel real when he's like leading a ground branch team and his newest guy gets killed or whatever. It's like, he's not going to be yucking it up with, or, like really sarcastic about that. Yeah, exactly. So the last couple of books he's been a little bit maybe less jokey. This one, I think there's some of that. There's definitely some levity from him, but he's still in a pretty desperate situation. So I think their relationship has changed. I think they're comrades now. I think everybody understands Zach's not going to turn around and sell Court out and kill him. That wouldn't make sense to the series. It would have to be something I haven't come up with yet.
I was going to say, don't put yourself in a box, man.
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
it's like it would have to be something that I can't even envision yet, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. But so they're fun characters to write, playing off of each other, and I think Court is best when he has someone to. I maybe it's just me as a writer. I really like dialogue, and I like telling a story with dialogue as much as I possibly can. And so, you write yourself into a box when you have your character, completely flying solo, which happens a lot. So I'm always trying to think of ways to incorporate dialogue into the story. I mean, at some point, the villain and the hero have got to communicate. It's like I've read books where they don't, and I'm like, I don't know. It's like I get that could be done cheesy, but it's your job to find a way not to do it cheesy. And I feel like that people want that mano a mano thing.
Did you ever think of in the past killing
Killing Zach?
Yeah.
And Zach could still. I mean, he could still die. Zoe can still die, and anybody can still
25th
die.
anniversary special.
Yeah.
It's all on the table. It's all on the table. Like it's still.
Yeah.
Like
I think everything is on the table.
Yeah.
It really is, and I'm not even sure how I'll go out in the series. I have like two ideas that are totally mutually exclusive, and I might use none of them. If I do write a book, which I know is going to be my last book.
Oh, it's going to be a bit like a Bond thing where you're sitting on an island and they,
maybe
launch missiles on.
Yeah.
Right.
Although I think that's been done.
Tom's not going to hire one of us to continue the Gray Man series.
Well, he might. That's another. That's
How
another
dare
way
he?
the series. Maybe I go out and my hero doesn't go out. He definitely could.
No, I
could
didn't.
definitely survive
can,
this
can we
thing.
just stop?
I wasn't
No,
killing
listen.
you off there,
I
Mark.
didn't think you were going to kill
Can
me.
we
I was
just
like
stop this?
Kyle Mills, he was done with Mitch Rapp, and
Yeah.
that's where I was going.
No, listen.
Yeah.
Can we just
No,
stop
I
this
get it.
this line of questions? I don't like this.
No,
We
no,
want
no,
to keep
no,
Mark
no.
where he's at.
Being uncomfortable.
Running. Let's go on to the next question.
Yeah.
The
I
peer
don't-
reviews meets, yeah.
You mentioned this isn't my question, but you mentioned Zach, and I'm as I age, and I'm a couple years younger than you, but every year, your mortality becomes a little bit more. You become more mindful of your mortality,
Yeah.
and to me, as I'm reading Zach, the way he's grown, and I do think he's grown, the way he's grown and evolved as a character, that it just I kind of see him kind of going through those machinations in his head where he's like he's getting older, he's
Yeah.
valuing time a little bit more, which maybe is why he's maybe open up to camaraderie with
Yeah.
Court.
Yeah.
But anyway, just it's very, very organic. I love the way you're developing and aging the characters. That wasn't my question. That was just a comment.
Yeah. No, thank you.
The in the Chaos Agent, which was the last book, was really heavy on technology.
Mhm.
And while you include a certain amount of military tech and police state surveillance tech, Midnight Black felt like a bit of a throwback to like a Ludlum or Le Carre or even a Morel novel where tradecraft was center stage.
Mhm.
Was that refocused a conscious effort when you set out to write the novel, or was it just like a natural result of the story you ended up telling?
I had a very thin idea of a story. I remember when Tom, my editor, Tom Colgan,
The Tom
Colgan
Yes.
was asking me, what I was going to write, like what I wanted to do the book about. And I remember I was sitting back here on my couch. We were talking on the phone, and I was like, "Have you ever seen that movie Firefox? That Clint Eastwood movie?" And of course, it's a
Yeah.
Craig
Thinking
Thomas book.
Russian.
And he just like started laughing. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "What are you going to write Firefox too?" And I was like, "No, it's there. There were these kind of this network of partisans inside the Soviet Union, and I can't remember where he actually was, which republic that he flew that plane out of. But anyway, that he worked with this. He got in this like rat line network that got him close to where his objective was. And I was like, what if Court, because I knew that Court was going into Russia to find Zoya. That was sort of a no-brainer because that was how Chaos Agent ended. I was like, what if one of the ways Court seeks, access is he uses people like that, but people like that from back then. So these are people in their 70s and 80s, and they're, Soviet, resistance fighters within the Soviet Union. So in the case of this book, there's a woman in Latvia, in Riga, Latvia, and there's a man in Moscow, and they are, in their 70s, and I think the man is about 80, but they used to, they were very brave in the 1980s in helping people get into and out of the Soviet Union, and so Court learns about them and tries to get them to sort of reactivate their old thing. And that's really all I had at the beginning. Like, I was like, how does Court get in? Who does he work with? I knew I wanted to talk about Russian sabotage in Europe because that's happening a lot. And I assumed it would still be happening in February 25. It's happening all the time. And we don't hear that much. We don't talk that much about it because, I mean, like the West likes to call it destabilizing actions or malicious actions or whatever, but it's just war. We're just not going to, we just don't want to call it war. Russia is doing all sorts of things, from the Havana syndrome, attacks and, bombings and assassination attempts and assassinations. They killed a defector in Spain last year, and, kind of a high profile guy that stole a helicopter. And they're just doing things to rail lines. They're doing things to all points of production of military equipment that are going in. They're trying to poison water supplies and all sorts of things. And I wanted to write about that some, but that wasn't going to be the main focus of the book. The main focus of the book was going to be Zoya Zakharova in this hard labor penal colony, and Court trying to get in there to get her out with all the problems that entails.
Kind of leads into the next question. So kind of answered it somewhat, but So the novel, it tackles contemporary geopolitical issues, particularly involving Russia, Ukraine.
Mm.
What unique challenges did you face in weaving real world current events into your fictional narrative while ensuring the story would remain relevant and authentic beyond the immediate news cycle?
Yeah, that's a good question. Every one of my books, and this goes for Clancy and Gray Man and the other stuff, I'm always trying to predict where the world is going to be when the book comes out. And that's dicey, but that's also interesting. And I'm interested in what's going on in the world. So it's stuff, a lot of this is stuff I'd be researching, or I'd have my nose in the news about this stuff, even if I wasn't writing a book about it. So it's good that I am. But this was the first book where I told myself, okay, we're not going to write about where we think things are going to be in February. I want to write a more hopeful story than what I expect to see.
Yeah,
And
like
in
that.
the case of like the Russian resistance in this fiction novel, I made it more robust and maybe a little more ideologically savory. There are different Russian resistance groups fighting against the Kremlin in Russia. I did a lot of research on them. Right now, there's a whole lot of things happening in Russia that are probably being done by Ukrainian intelligence, or there's a thing now they're calling it gig economy sabotage that the Russians are using. They're basically hiring people on Telegram and social media to go, poison water or blow up a rail line and things like that. I mean, it's not always, direct spies going from Russia into the West, or from Ukraine into Russia. So, but a lot of these groups that are anti-Putin or anti-Kremlin are also, completely anti-Semitic and or have some other issue with them.
Have
And
another
it's like,
hang up.
yeah, exactly. They have some other hang up. And even Alexei Navalny, there's a character in this book called Nathan Yarovoy, who is a stand-in for Alexei Navalny, who was really the last person who had a chance to defeat Putin at the ballot box. And of course, Putin poisoned him and then killed him and all sorts of things. Even Navalny, who I think is a great person in a lot of ways. I mean, he's got his own skeletons and issues, and he had worked with some right wing groups that he was trying to get support, and you have to pay the piper for that sort of stuff. So I just didn't want to get down into the weeds with all that stuff. So my Russian resistance fighters are a little more maybe clean cut is not the word, but a little more pro West. And I also wanted to write a more hopeful vision of how the West was tackling this problem with Russia's sabotage in the West. So I wanted a West that was more willing to go toe to toe with Russia than I expected to find, and I think that's borne out as well. So I had to learn all the geopolitics. I had to learn everything that was going on, and then I had to decide where I wanted to fictionalize it to make this story, really cook the way I wanted it to.
Well, that's a really good tie-in too. To my question is that, so, people that follow you on social media, they've seen these posted photos and your time in Moscow and your research in Russia that you've done in the past. And obviously that's probably changed, your access has changed. So maybe you can expound a little bit or elaborate like what you did for specific research on Midnight Black and what other factors shape this particular story that you could find in today's world.
Yeah, fortunately, I went to Russia when I was researching a Tom Clancy novel when Tom was still alive, Command Authority, and I still have my videos and pictures and stuff. It's a do not travel country for many good reasons. The State Department says do not go, and I've gone to some places where the State Department's like use caution or whatever. But
so Mark goes, do not go. So Mark's like, I'm going.
He takes a vape pen with him too.
There is no way I would go to Russia right now because you would just be picked up and traded back for someone in the West, but you might sit around for a couple of years while that deal was made.
4 years, 5 years,
or longer. And
do your research.
Yeah, I was like,
Good research.
it would sell books, really,
Yeah,
get
it
your name
was.
out there.
Dude, what
But
are you doing, Mark? Get on a
Come on.
plane,
Yeah,
Are
dude.
you in
I
this or
don't know.
not?
Are you committed to your art or not?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not. Look at him.
Clearly not. Clearly not.
Do you want number one New York Times bestseller?
Come on now.
Not that bad.
The Tom Cogan's like, get on a
Yeah,
plane, go.
yeah, exactly. Eat some borscht. Eat some bad borscht for a few
Oh,
years.
I was gonna say borscht is pretty good, but not bad
Yeah.
borscht. No.
Yeah.
Not the prison stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I basically had my memories and videos and notes and stuff from when I went there when it was safe to do so. And I used that there's a scene in Gorky Park and in the subways in Moscow and things of that nature. I did a lot of research on the penal system, reading about it. A lot of this stuff. So they call them gulags. The gulag system was very specific to back in the Stalin days, and but all these buildings were, many of these prisons are 700 and something prisons all across, federal prisons all across Russia, and most of them were built in the gulag days. So the prison is a real prison that I use in this book called YKA2 Yavas. It's a women's correctional colony, and it was built in 1931. It's the middle of this big work settlement, and they make uniforms for the military and for prison guards and things like that. So I have Zoya there working 16 hours a day. So I did a lot of research on that. There's things you can watch. There's things you can read. A lot of the prison, just background stuff I got from reading old gulag, old books about life in the gulags and things. So it wasn't like in the past 10 years, it's like stuff from the 1970s of people in the gulags.
It was memoirs?
Yeah. Nonfiction stuff. And I thought it was fascinating, and I wanted to kind of portray it, of the bleakness of it and the hopelessness of it. But, I had to use older material because there's not really that much written about it these days. There's, news articles and there's videos of the prisons. But so I did that. And then I did a lot of research into what Russia is doing as far as sabotage and which particular units were doing it and how they were doing it. And then I had to do a lot of research on the military hardware and troop movements. And I remember I was trying to decide if Kharkiv was still going to be in Ukrainian hands when the book came out, because Kharkiv the Russians are very, very, very close, and they were last summer. And I've kind of rolled the dice and said, I think maybe Ukraine will still have Kharkiv, and they do. I don't.
For right now.
For right now.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But so there was a lot of research, and there was a whole lot of just trying to decide, okay, is this going to be realistic, or is this going to be the fictionalized part of the story, because it's the way that I want the world to address this topic.
Well, you've kind of answered most of this question, but I'm going to ask it maybe a different way. I know the majority of the groups in the novel were invented for the stories, the New Russian Council, the Freedom of Russia Legion, for instance. But going back to the research, how close to reality are some of those groups from the standpoint of, are there cells that are pulling off acts of sabotage similar to those described in the book against Russia? I know what Russia's doing, but against Russia and with their state-controlled media, would we even know? So
yeah, that's a great question. Fortunately, even with their state-controlled media, Telegram, which we can all see, is what they use there. And there's lots of bloggers out there that are showing when a Russian fuel depot blows up or a train derails, and but I think a lot of that, as I was saying, was Ukrainian special forces or agents of Ukraine's special forces working for Russia. There actually is a group called the Freedom of Russia Legion. But they're not as I portrayed them. They're actually in Ukraine. They are Russians. Most of them are Russians who changed sides to Ukraine and are fighting, like, I think, as a battalion or something. So they're not infiltrated into Moscow as they are in the book. So there is all sorts of sabotage going on in Russia, and it's really an open question on what percentage of these is really organized by foreign groups like the Ukrainian special forces hiring people to do it or slipping people in there, and what percentage of it is a homegrown, organic, insurgent type thing. There is insurgent. And actually, Mordovia, which is the region where this prison is, there is a Mordovian kind of resistance group that is like they want Mordovian independence. And I'm going
So
like,
that's real world.
yeah, that's real world. And I'm like, of all the lost causes in the world, carving out a little piece of Russia inside of Russia for your, small group, it's, it's like, God bless you for trying, but oh my gosh, that I don't see that happening.
I would be very
I know.
curious to see the stories 10 years out. Like,
Yeah, I was just saying. I know it's a
what's going
country
on.
that's ruled by a lot of fear and such. But I'm wondering, do you have a sense of like, is there a large percentage of the Russian population that would love it if Putin fell from power, or do you think it's kind of? Do you think the war has steeled sort of such a Mother Russia pride that's kind of obscured?
Yeah, so polls are kind of meaningless because, what are you going to say when
Right.
when the state?
I love Putin.
Yeah, exactly.
99% approval rate. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the others. And not really to your question, but it's just another thing. It's like I remember when Russia took Crimea and said, we're going to make that part of Russia. It's Ukraine, but they're going to make it part of Russia. And then they said they did. They took it. They had boots on the ground and guns and tanks. And they said, we're going to hold a referendum and they're going to vote and see if they want to stay with us. And I remember just laughing, going like, well, that's no one's going to buy that. No one in the West is going to buy that. And that was 10 years ago. And I hear people all the time going like, well, the Crimea actually voted to be part of Russia. Well, they had been polled before and never a majority. And of all the oblasts, Crimea is the most pro-Russian of all of them, but it was never a majority that wanted, it would be like saying if Texas took a vote, whether they should be part of Mexico. A lot of people would say they want to be part of Mexico, but it doesn't mean we're going to give Texas over.
Right.
And it wouldn't be anything like a majority. But then, if Mexico came over the border, took Texas, and then, put a gun to your head and said, hey, you want to be part of Mexico now? The poll numbers are going to get skewed by that. But I remember just thinking like, well, we in the West are smart enough to know that that's just baloney. That'll never work. And it's worked so well because, I've heard, our government officials say, hey, they voted to do it. And it's like, yeah, they voted to do it when Russia was already there and voting against it. Well, really, the opposition, which was the majority of the country, boycotted. So, basically everybody who voted were the people that came to the the voting booth and wanted it. So it's ridiculous. But getting back to Russia, there's definitely it's hard to get that feeling. I mean, there's more and more people showing up in body bags. Russia's going to have their 1 millionth casualty. It's predicted in May. And
did you say 1 million?
1 millionth casualty.
That's just on the Russian side.
Just on the Russian side, they're losing 1,500 a day, dead, wounded.
Still.
Can you imagine that happening here in the United States? 1,500 soldiers.
No. I mean,
it would never
Gulf War 3,000 was the number that.
Yeah. They lost
support for the war.
Yeah. They lost 60,000 in December or something like that. And so it's really bad. They replenish it with kids from the Urals, but there's like I've seen videos of their like their sort of Rosvagardia, the National Guard, which is not like our National Guard. It's they're sort of one of their security units, like going to like an MMA school and just kicking the door in and just handcuffing all the students there, all the men there, and just dragging them out and throwing them in cars. It's like, hey, you're going to the front. It's really awful. They've almost emptied their prisons, and it's really bleak and it's really awful. And on top of that, the Ukrainians' drone technology has gotten so much better. They're able to hit things thousands of kilometers well over 1,000 kilometers away. I remember the target in my book when I wrote it was 600 kilometers from the border, and I was like, okay, they do have a couple things that could hit that. Maybe just have a few because it's not that. Now they're sending over dozens and dozens and dozens every day and flying much much further. So that you would think that might erode support for the war, but also with state media basically saying the Ukrainians are Nazis and they're going to come eat your children or whatever.
You got to have a boogeyman in a war.
Exactly. So For us, it's Canada, which is weird. I don't know. As adversaries go,
Damn.
kind of lazy.
Yeah.
I heard just recently Governor Trudeau was going to up his allotment to NATO. I don't know. Trump called him Trump. Anyway, I'm not going to say anything.
Good times.
Yeah.
No politics zone.
Yeah, I'm going to say no politics. So let's raise a glass. Mark, I have bourbon.
Mine is in a box somewhere.
Mike doesn't have glasses because he's moving.
Just going to swig it.
Mine has a bear because
I'm waiting for it.
with bears.
So, sir, you have completed the normal portion, traditional portion of our, question and answer here, and now we're going to get to the silly things.
Great.
It's the what do we call it, Sean? The bonus lightning round.
Well,
I'm going to begin.
It's a non-lightning
name and only.
I mean, much like we don't review anything, this really isn't a lightning round because it's not like fast answers.
We really
so everything on our show is a lie.
It really is.
If I really had to go to the bathroom right now, I would make it a lightning round, but I'm good. So
yeah, okay, all right.
Well, hey, we edited the show, so you can go.
You can.
No, I'm good. No.
We've done that in previous interviews. We've stopped.
Ted Bell, the late Ted Bell, had several bathrooms.
Oh, well.
It was an interesting. So anyway, so I'm going to go first. So if mine are about court, so put on your court hat.
Okay.
So if he had to choose a motivational poster for his office wall, say he was working in a cubicle for whatever reason, would it be trust the process or trust no one? And how many hidden weapons would he stash behind it?
It would be trust no one. And he would have a lot of weapons stashed behind it if there was a good place to stash them. He would have weapons all over the place, kind of like I do. But
he's in his cubicle.
Yeah.
Sally, don't come and ask court a question.
Yeah. He's got a staple gun and a hole punch he could turn you into dog meat with.
Okay. All right. So next one.
It wouldn't be you miss 100% of the shots you haven't taken because he's taking them all.
He's taking yeah. All right. So Court has to write a self-help book about trust issues. Give me a title.
About trust issues?
Yeah.
I like trust no one.
Can't use that one. Come on. Give me something.
All right. I like, trust the process. I'm going to use the other one because
all right. I can't stop you from doing that one.
Yeah.
All right. So trust the process.
Or don't trust the process.
Don't trust the process.
Don't trust the process. There you go.
So Court, he joins a celebrity security detail. Now he's doing executive protection just for a day.
Yeah.
What would stress him out more? Tom Cruise doing his own stunts where he's hanging upside down from an airplane without a parachute and he's just attached by cables, or Travis Kelce navigating Swifties in the crowds?
I think he'd be more stressed out by Travis Kelce. I mean, like with Tom Cruise, he'd be like, "Man, that's on you." It's like I'm not hard to catch you. I'm hard to stop threats, external threats. Yeah.
The Swifties. Yeah.
I think it'd be really stressful to have all those people coming up at you at different angles and different. Yeah, I think that's got to be a security nightmare, even if they're 15-year-old girls. It's like the North Korean, the brother of Kim Jong-un, that was killed by the two young ladies that didn't even know they were killing him. Do you guys know that story?
Yeah.
It's a great documentary on that. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a
video's crazy.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah.
The manner of deaths of his family members are also, all those other ones are fascinating. Like a gun for I think it was his uncle or something.
Yeah. He was his uncle was a general or a colonel or something, and supposedly they lined up
flak.
Jeez.
My wife and I went to Bourbon and Beyond in Louisville, which is a concert music fest, and Chris Isaac came down into the audience and just started walking around singing, and you could tell the look on his couple of security guys' faces was, "Oh shit, I guess we're doing this."
Yeah.
And they literally just took this meandering thing through the crowd. There was granted, he's not, Elvis or whatever, but still all the people were there to see him.
Yeah.
Man, I'd hate to be a security guy right now.
Oh yeah. If you're responsible for that,
people want to grab you and just terrible.
Yeah.
I remember Obama got hurt playing in a basketball game when he was president, and he got elbowed by somebody and knocked to the ground and was bleeding. And I was sitting there going how does how does Secret Service handle that? You know, it's like,
Yeah,
I
we
don't know,
put
Chris.
cuffs, we put cuffs on that guy.
Yeah.
We
Did it
put
really?
yeah, we put cuffs on that guy. No, we don't put.
Oh.
You said a
I mean,
pig.
like, it's weird though. Like, it's weird. It's like, wow, someone
It's
just
true.
elbowed the president and
so
dropped him to the ground.
like, anybody that gets an arm's length of the president, whoever the president is wanted, is patted down, is searched. You know,
Okay.
we run all those searches. So like, if it happens,
Yeah, but the elbow, man, that can do some damage.
Some sharp elbow.
you'll see some like guys like, no, that's his buddy. No, it just
Yeah.
happened on the court. Like we don't do anything.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's got to be stressful.
Well, my three questions are travel themed.
Okay.
Not particularly funny, just travel themed. You've been I think 35 countries researching your books. I think that's the last count I saw.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So, what is the most harrowing travel experience you've had?
Well, I mean, I get asked this sometimes, and they're not sexy. They're not like, you know, I was
Doesn't have
Pick it
to be.
up.
yeah. It like I was in Mexico and Nayarit and on the Pacific coast there, south of Sinaloa, but in the northern part of Nayarit, like way north of Puerto Vallarta, in a town called San Blas. And this cab driver was just really, really over the top. And he didn't speak English, and I speak enough Spanish. And he was trying to take me up to this hill to get some senoritas and some drugs and this other stuff, and he just wouldn't drop me off. And he was taking me off the route, and I knew we were off the route because I was staying.
He knew what you needed. He's like,
Yeah,
this is what
yeah.
you need, and this is what you need.
And I just kept telling him, and it got like really angry and boisterous. And it, you know, and it wasn't even that dangerous because it's like he wasn't dangerous, but he was going to take me someplace where I didn't want to go. And you know, I kept thinking like, all right, at this point, I need this guy to get me back to where I'm going, because if I was just dropped right here, it was a little seedy and underdeveloped, and you don't know anything about the people there. So there was that. You know, I've had some stuff that was like scary at the time, but then you look back on it, and it was fine. I was in Algeria, and they were just like really sort of like threatening people around this vehicle that I was in, and it had U.S. government plates on it, and we were just basically stuck in traffic right next to this hookah bar, and these people were just like all getting up, all coming over because they could tell it was a government thing. And I was talking to the defense attaché, and I was like, I mean, what do you do in a situation like this? He's like, you know, if they want to get us, they can get us at any time. He's like, really? He's like, you have to do this job with just this understanding that like, you know, anything can happen at any time. And nothing happened. I think they were just more curious, but they were all sort of, you know, military age males that were, you know, like coming up and semi surrounding us, and then traffic cleared. So yeah, but usually almost everything bad that's happened to me is involved like cab drivers.
or here in the States.
New York.
Or here in the state. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Memphis.
I live in Memphis,
town.
Tennessee.
Not a safe
yeah.
town. Yeah,
Not a safe. Yeah.
Going to the grocery store.
Okay, question number 2. So, with all those places you've traveled, what is a place or two that's still on your bucket list for travel?
Japan, for sure. Never been, would love to go.
It's fascinating. I was there for a couple months.
My
Have you
wife
been?
loves it. Yeah, my wife's been there. She wants to take me there.
My sister,
That's
it's her favorite place. She's
My brother's about to go. And, you know, it's just one of those places that you grew up seeing a lot of, and you know, I just would love to experience that. I've been to China and Hong Kong. Ditto Vietnam. I planned Gunmetal Gray to go into Vietnam, but then I had to have ankle surgery, and I wasn't able to take a trip for it.
Oh,
so
I remember seeing pictures of you laid up right in.
for most of a year. Yeah, it was bad. And so that and Vietnam, and really, I mean, I like going anywhere. It's weird. I've never really been to Spain. I've been in the airports in Madrid and Barcelona, but I've never really seen
Spain's
Spain.
beautiful. Yeah,
I've been to
Spain.
France. I speak Spanish. Or crappy Spanish, but I speak enough. And I've been sort of all around there. I've been to most countries in Europe. I lived in Germany for a little while, but I've never been to Spain.
So my wife went to Vietnam for work, and she said, you walk outside the hotel and you're already drenched. It's not raining. It's just the humidity is
When I was in
Atrocious.
Hong Kong, and I was there in April, so I don't know if that's a particularly bad month or maybe it was, but it was so, I was just so sweaty all the time. And Memphis is a very humid area, but I was like, we got nothing on this. And I bet Vietnam's probably even more.
It's
Yeah,
it was
probably.
brutal.
Chris will vouch for me, but you have to take Allison to the Amalfi Coast.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, that's our plan. That was going to be our honeymoon.
Have you not been
I
there?
know, I remember.
We
I
still
see
haven't.
you.
I've still not been. We've been to
Oh
Milan
my
together, but
gosh.
we haven't
No,
been to
that's
Amalfi.
nothing. No,
Yeah.
Amalfi. Sean and we're going to retire and move there.
Really?
Yeah.
All
Not
right.
together. Not together.
Together.
Dude, what are you talking about? Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay. But anyway, all right. No, it's a great place. And I have some things to add to that. I've added that guide too. All right. My last question. What is the single best meal or restaurant experience you've had outside the United States?
Well, my favorite ever was inside the United States. Was at Patsy's in New York.
Okay.
But outside the U.S.,
Bad borscht in Moscow.
let me think. There's a right answer to this. I'm just really trying to think of what it is. I can't remember. I mean, honestly, like one of my favorites was eating lunch in Paris with the kids and the family, and just an outdoor cafe with, and we did that multiple times. But there was one place right by the Luxembourg Gardens, and it was something Medici, because the Medici fountain's right there. That's in the name. And sitting outside there and just having like this leisurely European lunch with kids who had never been or they'd never been to Europe. And it was really, really cool. The food was fantastic. We had a bottle of wine at noon. It's always fun. And
That's my life. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's probably my favorite, like outside the U.S. And my wife and I went back to Paris for a whole week last March, because we'd gone with the kids the year before, and we're like, let's just do that with the two of us. And we had some really, really great meals. But I mean, it was cool to bring the kids there and have them experience that.
Those picks were great.
Yeah.
Mikey?
Okay. Last and least, let's see. All right. So these are quotes, or fairly famous quotes from authors. And so since we hear that you might be an author, we thought you probably know who wrote these. So I'm going to give you the quote, and you have to tell me or tell us who the famous author was that did that.
All right. We'll see.
All right. Number one, it's never too late to be what you might have been.
Tony Robbins. Is he an author?
Yeah, I think he is an author.
Yeah. I don't know.
George Eliot.
George Eliot. Okay.
Yeah. All right. These would be more like.
Was it? He's the singer for Def Leppard, right?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Nickelback.
No, that's
Nickelback.
Yeah,
Nickelback.
Or
Nickelback.
Joe Elliott.
That's Joe Elliott.
number
Thanks.
two.
Thanks for getting that, Sean.
I got it, brother.
Amateurs sit and wait for inspiration. The rest of us just get up and go to work.
Oh, you know who said something very similar to that, but it's probably not right, was Andy Rooney. Said something super similar to that. But I don't know who that.
Stephen King.
Stephen King? Yeah, good for him.
Okay.
Yeah, that book, if anybody who hasn't read On Writing and wants to write, is crazy.
In my boxes somewhere.
Great.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring, and it's also meat and potatoes. It's not like navel gazing, woo woo. It's just really good.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. Last one. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment.
Tony Robbins. No.
Britney Spears.
Britney Spears.
Sooner or later, he's gonna.
Herbert Hoover.
Gosh, Shakespeare. Is that a Shakespeare?
Yeah, right. Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Oh yeah, I'm not up. I'm not up on my Emerson. He was good with Lake and Palmer, but when he went solo, I didn't. He played Yes for a while.
Sean totally gets those.
Ralph Waldo Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Excellent.
That's it, buddy. That's it.
I survived.
You did.
I'm a quote guy. I didn't know any of those.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of those either. So Midnight Black, it's out now, right? Or it's coming out?
February 18th.
February 18th. Thank you.
Yeah.
February 18th. It's going to be a New York Times bestseller.
Yeah, the day after the show airs.
The day after
Going into
the
my
show.
travel box.
Yes, we're going to raise a glass to you, Mark. Dude, we always have a tremendous of fun with you on the show.
Yeah.
Say, this is one of my favorites. It's good to see you guys.
Yay.
Cheers, brother. Cheers.
Yeah, and I'll see you soon, right, Sean? Am I going to see you, or is that?
Yeah,
Is that...
off air, I was going to ask you questions.
All right. We'll see you, brother.
All right, man.
Peace.
Let's raise a glass and a book. Mark Greaney, always a fun guest on the show. We're talking Midnight Black. We're talking Court Gentry, the Gray Man. We've done several takes for this one, but I'm glad we're finally here, and I'm glad we're at the end of the show. So I'm going to have a drink.
We're running out of internet.
Great show, great book.
Great friends.
One more drink. Oh,
Cheers.
Okay, here we go.
Cheers.
Oh, I need to get a glass.